So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Doers, not hearers only. Therefore lay aside all filthiness and overflow of wickedness, and receive with meekness the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. James 1:19-21. So then,
Today, we're jumping into a really powerful passage from the book of James. Now, James was one of the early church's most practical, no-nonsense leaders. And here he gets right to the heart of one of faith's biggest challenges, the huge gap that can exist between what we say we believe and what we actually do. He's calling for a faith that really, truly works.
Okay, so let's dive in. Now, you might think James would start with some big, abstract theological idea, but he doesn't. He starts with something super practical, something we all deal with every day, a warning about our words and our anger. Why? Because he argues these are the first clues to what's really happening on the inside. He lays out this simple but honestly profound contrast. Being quick to listen, that's about being humble, right? It's about being willing to learn. On the flip side, being slow to speak is like a safety measure against those impulsive, knee-jerk words that, let's be honest, can do a ton of damage. It's timeless wisdom. And here is where things get really interesting. James takes this beyond just good advice for getting along with people. He connects our anger to a major spiritual problem. He's basically saying that our raw, unchecked human anger actually fights against the kind of just and righteous world that God wants. So what does he mean by the righteousness that God desires? Think of it more as the fundamental harmony, the justice, the moral rightness that God built into the fabric of creation. James's point is that our anger is completely out of sync with that divine order.
Okay, so it's clear our outward actions, our speech, our anger, they matter a lot. But this leads to the real problem James wants to get at. If we know this stuff, why do we so often fail to actually do it? Well, he says it comes down to a really deep and dangerous form of self-deception.
To make his point crystal clear, he uses this brilliant and totally relatable image from everyday life back then. A person looking into a mirror. It sounds simple, but he uses it to expose a huge spiritual blind spot.
So picture this. Someone's looking at themselves in a piece of polished bronze, which was the common mirror of the time. They see their face for just a second, but as soon as they turn and walk away, poof, the image is gone from their mind. The insight they gained meant nothing because it wasn't followed by any kind of action. It just vanished.
And this right here is the heart of his warning. James is saying that just listening to truth without doing anything about it is exactly like that quick glance in the mirror. We fool ourselves, we think we've changed just because we heard something important. But true transformation, he insists, takes way more than a fleeting look. So, if just hearing the word isn't enough, what's the answer? How do we close that gap between knowing something and actually doing it? Well, James points to this powerful internal force that can create real change from the inside out. He lays out a pretty clear path for us. It starts with this intentional act of cleaning house, getting rid of all the moral filth that holds us back. Then comes a humble attitude, a genuine readiness to accept the word. It's not a passive thing, it's like you're preparing the soil of your heart so something amazing can be planted. So what is this implanted word? It's not described as a list of rules you have to memorize. It's presented as something alive, dynamic, the core message of the gospel that literally takes root deep inside a person. And according to James, that internal living power is what truly has the ability to save and change us. And this brings us to the final, crucial part of the puzzle. After all this internal work, what does this implanted word actually look like when it's lived out? James gives us a very practical, very tangible definition of what faith looks like in the real world. He basically brings his whole argument home by shifting from the internal to the external. He says if you want to know what authentic, pure religion looks like, stop looking for a feeling or a fancy declaration. Instead, look for the evidence. Look for the undeniable proof in how a person lives. And here are the 3 proofs he gives. First, controlling the tongue, which, you'll notice, brings us right back to where he started. Second, active compassion, caring for the most vulnerable people in society, like orphans and widows. And third, personal integrity, not letting yourself get corrupted by the negative values of the world around you. So, the ultimate takeaway from all this is pretty clear. A faith that is real is a faith that works. For James, having the right beliefs is totally incomplete, and maybe even a deception if it's not matched by having the right actions. The two have to go together. In the end, what you do is the undeniable proof of what you actually believe.
And that leaves us with the very same challenge that James gave to his readers almost 2,000 years ago. It's not just a question of what we hear or what we know. The real question is, what do we do about it? It's a question that's definitely worth thinking about.